My name is Magali Christopher. I am the director of Conch International Film Festival. And today we have this amazing panel, Romance in Caribbean Cinema. How love can redefine social change. And our moderator today is Maëlla Kancel. I'd like to tell you a bit about Maëlla Kancel, and then I will introduce you to our amazing panelists. Maëlla founded Karukerament Podcast, and the definition of the mission of Karukerament Podcast is sharing Caribbean narratives. Yeah, this is what Maëlla Kancel's motto is since the launch of Karukerament in 2019. Her goal is to document the representation of the Caribbean in cinema and television. Maëlla is not just our panel moderator for today. She's also a Conch International Film Festival 2021 Media Partner and a member of our jury. Thank you so much for being here, Maëlla. And I'd like to also introduce our panelists, Richard Sénécal, Rich Joseph, and Monique A. Robinson. I'll be on the side to assist with reading questions as we go along in the chat. But other than that, have a lovely, lovely chat.
Thank you, Magali. Thank you to the people who came here to attend this panel. So before we start, we're just going to do a round of table and see which films we are going to talk about today. So let's start with Monique.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am the writer and executive producer of A Ring, which is a romantic comedy about how a Black family came to be in a very, let's say, non-traditional way by using the Orishas Oya and Shango to tell this fairy tale story for their young 7-year-old daughter.
Thank you. Richard Sénécal.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Sénécal. I'm a filmmaker, Haitian filmmaker. I've been doing films for the last 35 years. Did a lot of documentaries, about 4 fiction films, and many other commercial works such as advertisement and things like that. I'm happy to be with you today.
Thank you. And Rich, your turn.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rich Joseph. I am the writer-director for Harlem Love, and it's a love story that takes place in 1920s Harlem during the Renaissance, and it's a couple standing at the altar having some reflection before they say I do, and I'm happy to be with you all.
Thank you. So the title of the panel was hard for me to find because I was hesitating between love, the word love, and the word romance. And then I decided to go with romance because today I really want to talk about the love between two people that are not blood related, and to see exactly how we represent, how filmmakers, how Caribbean cinema represent romance. So my first question is, why did you decide to create a film around a love story? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. For me, it was extremely personal. At the time, I was dating my now wife, but longtime girlfriend, and I was receiving a lot of pressure from a lot of different folks to get married, and I wanted to, my inner feeling at the moment was like, I think you have to build like a great foundation before you decide to say get married. It shouldn't be an allotted time and then you get married. So I wanted to just research and look into what really takes to have a sustainable marriage.
Okay. And what about you, Monique?
I wrote The Ring at a time which was also coming from a personal situation where I was dealing with the latter end of a breakup, and I was very curious about courtship in regards to the different things we do where we continue to choose the person we engage with and who we eventually wind up having to be our partner. And how do we reframe that story when it's time to tell that story to our posterity? Or do we tell them everything, or do we make it this fairy tale image? And I was just very curious about the interactions between two people who are choosing love consistently.
Thank you. And Richard, so you can either talk about your film Cuisine or your film Barricade. It's up to you.
Yes, thank you, Maëlla. Okay, for me, love is always an excuse to talk about social issues, because here in Haiti, we live in a very not equal society. So love is always a pretext to talk about social issues. Barricade was about a young girl coming from the countryside, and she was hired as a maid in a richer family, a wealthier family. So she falls in love with the boy from that family. So it was more about talking about this distance between these two families. And Cuisine is the same. It's about a young girl that has to engage into prostitution, and doing so, she finds love on the way. But it's not specifically about love, but the relationship between love and money, love and power. It's more about talking about social issues than talking about strictly love.
Okay. And for Rich, you said your story was set in the Renaissance. I'm thinking about Beyonce now. Renaissance era. Why did you decide to change the time? I mean, the time period. I don't know how you say it, but yeah.
I have an affinity for the Harlem Renaissance in general. So at the time, and still a bit now, I always reading stuff. And at the time, I was really taken aback by a lot of authors in that era, especially one in particular, Zora Neale Hurston. So I was reading a lot of her work. And so I was inspired. And a lot of her work, it does capture love. And a lot of the work from the Harlem Renaissance, whether it be Langston Hughes or any other artist, they talk about love and Black life in general. So I felt like it just matched to just make it and explore what it would be like.
Okay. And so for you, Monique, it's a contemporary story, and for Richard, although the stories were set in the early 2000s, they were your contemporary. They were written at a contemporary time for you. So, do you have any? I'm sorry, the question just came up to me right now. But do you have? What's different between creating a story, a love story, in a contemporary time for the filmmaker, and creating a story that is set before, and why not in the future? Who wants to go first?
Well, I don't think it's very important, because love is a constant. Mathematically, we could call that a constant. Either it's whether it's in the 80s or whatever time it is, it's still the same. What makes the difference, in my opinion, is the context where you place it. The relationship between love and the context between love and the problems of the time you place it. But love is love. There are some changes sometimes when we talk about society. For instance, there are some things that were possible 100 years ago that you can't do anymore. When we talk, for instance, between the relationship between men and women, there are something that were acceptable 100 years ago that are not today, but the reverse is also true. But love still is love. So I don't think this is a problem. That's my feeling.
What about you, Monique?
I agree in regards to the constant and infinite nature of love. And I think it is the given circumstances or the obstacles that makes it unique into regards to what the characters or whoever's going through. Particularly, I was interested in making it timeless or ageless with the feel of contemporary, because there is some ideology that we have now about love and courtship that I am curious about and questioning how this constant thing can change with societal norms or outside pressure. And I think my curiosities were piqued in regards to that.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, since your story is set in another time.
Yeah, so I agree with both what Richard and Monique said. I think there is such a similarity that I found when I was reading these stories from the Harlem Renaissance of love today and love now. Obviously, there's the environmental circumstances and context is a little different, but the want for like happiness and finding a life partner was the same. So I thought it was cool to just delve into the past and connect it to what I was going through in the present at the time.
Okay. So that leads me to my next question about the specificity that you can of Caribbean storytelling when it comes to a love story. What are the elements that can limit or expand the representation of love, in your opinion, when it comes to a Caribbean stories or Caribbean characters? So who wants to go first? Richard, I feel like you want to go first.
It's not that I want to go first, but it seems that it's better when I go first. That encourages the youngers to. Well, I don't think there's that much difference when you tell a love story, if you're in the Caribbean or if you're elsewhere. I remember when I wrote my first fiction script about love, which was Barricade, I sent the script to the Asian filmmaker, now famous. He was not that much famous at the time, Raoul Peck. And he's a friend of mine. And I sent him the script to have some feedback. And he told me, that was the first version of the script. He told me, what you just wrote is Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Because the basic of love is always the same. It's been 500 years, it's always the same. If you want to enrich your story, you need to put some context in it. And the context is you're living in Haiti, you're living in a Caribbean country, and you need to put this context into your story with the very specifics of where you're living in right now. And I did that. What I mean is just that it's not the love that makes a Caribbean film about love unique. It's the context. And I think we already said that a little bit earlier. It's the context. I guess my friend Rich right now he made a film in Harlem. I haven't seen it yet. But I think that the context of Harlem and the context that his characters are living in, that's what's going to make his film about love unique. I'm not sure. That's what I think.
Well, the thing about I'm going Rich because I watched the film, so I'm just going to say you could have decided to talk about racism, for instance. Harlem Renaissance, you could have used something, racism, something like that. And you didn't. You really focused on the characters, their journey as being a woman and being a man. And we don't get to see this aspect. Whereas usually when people will talk about this time, people who are non-Black people, for instance, they will automatically think about racism in the representation. So that's what I meant when I mean specific elements that you can either expand the representation or maybe they can limit if you're going to change a few perception of the audience. What people usually think about the stereotypes that they will go for when they think about, oh, Caribbean characters, so of course it's going to be this way. Like you said, Richard and Rich. Richard, yeah, it's all about the context. But see, for Haiti, I feel like people don't know that much about the context of Haiti. They have a lot of misconceptions about people in Haiti, and they will not automatically think about how you can develop a love story between two people. So, and I think that's a part of what I see in the audience, or when we say, do you have a memory of a Caribbean love story? Like, we are already all past 30, I think, or in this area. So why don't we have that? More memories of things like that. Why cinema hasn't given us why our cinema hasn't given us yet this kind of memories, you know? Monique.
I'm going to combine this. I feel like in regards to cinema, it's when it comes to the Caribbean, and particularly the people of African diaspora, it's a Eurocentric lens. And sometimes we can fall into that template. Like I call it European, because it ropes everyone in to what the concept of how we view love, how we view the interactions in between us. And there has been so many stereotypes, particularly with my film. I tried to fight against the stereotype of having a white or Eurocentric presence within the film and focus it on a Black family that actually is supportive and is loving, and a lead woman who has a supportive man, although they are wittily sparring. And I think sometimes the Western cinematic influences how we view each other, how we express love, how we court, how we talk to each other, and how we continue to choose each other. And it comes out in our work. But we do have people who are trying to get our own stories and our own reflections out. It's just having that ability to have a larger point of access to it, I would particularly say.
Okay. Wait, do you want to add something?
Yeah. I like everything that's said about the stereotypes and everything. But I feel like, as a kid who watched so much TV in the 90s, the only things I've seen of Caribbean folks are actually meant to be just Jamaican folks. And I think what's missing is just authenticity of just real characters of real relationships. So like, Richard's in Haiti. I am a Haitian American. I'm first generation American. Context of a first generation American trying to find love with another Caribbean. And I grew up in a Caribbean neighborhood in Flatbush, and trying to find love and navigate what your parents expect of you and this American culture, and trying to do that. I think that's something authentic that could add or expand into the Caribbean love story. And I just think, the real word is just authenticity and truth.
Yeah. I see in the chat, Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. You're doing great, Maëlla. And Damani, as a Jamaican, so you're saying Cool Runnings doesn't equal all of Caribbean. Oh, okay, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Doesn't equal all of Caribbean. Emoji.
That's right.
I was going to add into that when I said Western, like it is a concept of various islands in Jamaica. And as a child of Jamaican immigrants, that was the concept in regards to love stories. I got how Stella got her groove back. And that's how I thought that the representation was, that you go and you find this man who is Jamaican or whoever, and it's going to give you and fulfill all of your needs. And so I really try to, like you said, Rich, have the authenticity. And I think it's allowing various people to have the access to tell the stories from where they are from, and to force to continue to tell their stories is how we get to have our own fairy tales and our love stories, as he proposed.
Richard?
Yeah, just I wanted to add something because I have exactly the reverse experience that you both had, because I grew up in Haiti. And the thing here is what we have here, what we receive here in terms of movies, in terms of series, comes from the Western world, comes from the United States, comes from Europe. And we have, unfortunately, this tendency to replicate what we see, and we lose this authenticity because we don't have enough Caribbean images here. So the goal for me and for some others was to get out of this. Okay, I've been watching a lot of American series while I was a kid. I've been watching a lot of European films also. But the goal was to create our own world. And that was very difficult because we did not have anything to refer to. We had to start from the very beginning. And that's quite another experience. And I didn't really grow up outside of Haiti. I grew up here. I always worked here mostly. And I have the reverse experience that you both had, actually.
Yeah. Magali?
I'm just here, as I should have been before, to read responses from the audience. Angelina shared, I, a Puerto Rican, learn how to dance bachata from a past Haitian boyfriend. Caribbean love.
Yeah. Bachata is from the Dominican Republic. Haiti is in one side. Puerto Rico is in one side. So bachata was on the way between the two loves.
And there's also Cheryl. She added something else.
Mr. Sénécal, you talked about context. What happens when context seems larger than the characters, stories, emotional drive?
Okay, to answer that question, I'm going to answer a question that Maëlla didn't ask, but she was talking about asking, is about our first love story. The first love story we heard as a Caribbean filmmaker, and I'm going to refer to two things. It was not necessarily about a movie. It might have been about something else. And in my experience, my personal experience, it was about two books. One was by Jacques-Stéphane Alexis, a great Asian writer. It's called in French Gouverneur et Compère Général Soleil. That we can translate that by General Son, My Brother. And the other book is Gouverneur de la Osée by another Asian writer, Jacques Oumet, Masters of the Do. And these two stories are exactly what you just referred into your question. It's when the context is really larger than the characters, because the context is about social issues, it's about history, it's about struggles. And when you are in this situation, actually, and that's my case about the movies that I made, I said earlier that love was just a pretext. And when you want to talk about big issues that are larger than love, you can pick love, but actually the film is more about these issues than it is about love itself. But love is easy for people to be related to. So you get a wider audience when you talk about love than when you talk about history, than when you talk about poverty, than when you talk about dictatorship, whatever it is. So that's what happened.
And okay, it was you. And so we have time for one more question. Yes? Because I wanted to ask the question about our definition of happily ever after. If you have an idea of, how a Caribbean love story would get its happily ever after, what would be a happily ever after? And you can spoil your film. It's okay. The ending of your films.
For me, I think a happily ever after is people, no matter what they're going through, trials and tribulations, obstacles, deciding to remain committed. That's what I would consider happily ever after.
I would say that love is always a work in progress. You cannot really know what's going to happen next. And since I'm older than all of you, I can tell you that you never know how it's going to end. And you never know if the love you're living today is the last love of your life, actually. Even if you believe it, you never really know it for sure. So what is happiness in all that? I think happiness is about first loving yourself, not in a selfish way, but learning who you are, learning yourself with all your qualities and all the bad things about yourself. And with that, you can construct a wider love to everyone else. And that's my way of seeing this happily ever after thing, is first loving yourself, and from that, learning to love the world.
Okay. What about you, Monique?
Both of those were so profound. I also think that the happily ever after is a consistent choice. It's a consistent choice to choose the happiness in spite of, and you can fill in that blank. Particularly, you said the ups and downs and the trials, and I like to think of that in the choice of love, of sparring is training. So while you go through those different things, finding yourself, developing yourself, so you can have more love for whomever you choose to love, is a consistent choice of how to exercise and develop that muscle and the capacity for it.
Wow. Thank you so much. Great answers. Thank you for this discussion. I'm so happy.
Thank you all for this amazing conversation. Thank you. And I hate to be the one to end this chat. I hate it. So if you want to continue having this conversation, you can go to the CSIFF Lounge and chat about romance in the Caribbean and envision and manifest the romance stories that you could possibly imagine. Thank you, Maëlla. Thank you for moderating this great conversation. Thank you, Monique. Thank you, Rija. Thank you, Rich.